Hello, and welcome to this session on how to strengthen your empathy at work. I'm so glad that you decided to join me for this webinar. My name is Catherine Manning. I'm the author of the book, The Empathetic Workplace, 5 Steps to a Compassionate, Calm, and Confident Response to Trauma on the Job. I'm also a lawyer who's worked on ways to support people through difficult times for more than 25 years, including 15 years at the US Department of Justice, where I was a senior attorney advisor on victim rights. And what that meant is I helped the department through its response to victims in cases like Bernie Madoff, the Boston Marathon bombing, the Pulse nightclub shooting. One of the things that drives me in my career is how we support and show up for each other. And a lot of that comes down to empathy. The reason I decided to do this session is because I knew that there were a lot of myths or misperceptions about empathy, about what it is and what it does. In particular, I think a lot of people feel like empathy is something that's kind of hardwired into us, that you are born with a set level of empathy and there's nothing you can do to change that. And that's just not true. There's a lot of research that shows that we can strengthen our empathy, we can get better at it. And then the other one is, I think a lot of people feel like women are naturally more empathetic than men, and that actually is also not true. Numerous studies have shown that men and women have the same base level empathy in them, so there aren't gender differences in empathy. All of us, I think, though, can get better at using it. And what I'm going to spend a little bit of time today talking about is why it's so important that we strengthen our empathy. And then I'm going to go through the 5 steps, 5 ways that we can increase our empathy, particularly at work. So first off, what is empathy? I know there are a lot of different definitions and understandings about what it is. So I just wanted to start off clarifying what I mean by empathy. And what I mean is our ability to both understand and manage our emotions and the emotions of others, of the people that we are interacting with. So that's what I mean by empathy. Sometimes it's also referred to as emotional intelligence. And here's a little bit about why it's so important, especially at work. There have been a lot of different studies and lots of research on this topic. And some of the things they found are, for instance, that 90% of the top performers at work are high in empathy. Isn't that incredible that that is really the through line for successful people in the workplace? It's the highest predictor of high performance in leaders. So they did a survey of 15,000 managers all over the world, different levels of management, frontline all the way up to the C-suite. And they found that empathy was the one thing that really was the best predictor of whether a leader was going to be a high performer or not. But sadly, the other thing they found in that same survey was that only 40% of leaders were strong or even just proficient at empathy. You know, I think all of us are familiar with this idea that the people who get elevated at work, the people who get promotions and become managers, are the people who are good at their jobs. So somebody who's really good at sales or data analysis, for instance, then becomes the manager of the other people who do data analysis or do sales. Unfortunately, those technical skills don't always translate to a good ability to manage others. And that's why we really see this big distinction in leaders. You have to assume that you've got to have the technical expertise. You have to understand what the people who you work with are doing. But then what sets apart really exemplary leaders is their empathy. And then here's this other stat that I just thought was fun. People with high empathy make more money. So on average, 29,000 more per year than those with lower empathy. Isn't that incredible? They found that every point in empathy, so every increase in point in empathy added to $1,300 in a person's annual salary. So it really, across the board, no matter what role you're in, empathy is going to make a big difference in your success at work and ultimately in your paycheck even. Those, I think, are issues that are evergreen, things that we should always be thinking about, but obviously empathy is particularly important right now. We're in the middle of what some are calling the Great Resignation or the Great Realignment. I think a lot of people over the last 2 years have had a reckoning at work, really thinking through what is it that I'm doing here? What is my purpose? Why am I in this organization? Why am I on this team? What are my efforts going toward? And I think a lot of that has come down to people recognizing that what matters most are the connections, people that they're working with, the people that they serve are the things that really feed them much more than a paycheck. So just a few stats to back that up. They did a survey and found that 80% of employees would be willing to leave their job if they found a more empathetic employer, and 57% would take a pay cut to do so. Right now, the majority of Americans have said that they expect to be looking for a new job in the next year. And what they're looking for is that meaning, that connection, that sense of why am I here? And that they personally are valued and seen, that the organization and the people they work with truly see them and value them for who they are. So what are some of the things we can get if we are empathetic at work, if we strengthen our ability to be empathetic at work? A few things, and I wanted to include this in part because I think often people think empathy is at odds with being a strong leader. But in my experience, it's actually the reverse. It's nearly impossible to be a good, strong, effective leader without empathy. First of all, because it helps you understand what's actually going on. If you are able to tap into your empathy and see that, for instance, maybe there's something weird going on with this team and I don't really understand why, but for some reason in my team meeting, nobody looks at Josh anymore. And you think, why is that happening? If you can tap into your empathy, you can understand the root cause before it becomes a bigger problem. And also address it right the first time. It also allows you to communicate more effectively with people. If you understand what's actually going on with them, you can communicate with them in a way that they can hear you and truly understand what you're saying. It also helps you avoid unnecessary conflict. A lot of times people who are angry or upset, what it is that they're doing is really inviting you into an argument about something that has nothing to do with you. If you're able to recognize that and say, you know what, I can tell that's not anything that has to do with me. I'm just going to sidestep this and not take part in it. Instead, let's get at the actual root cause of what you're upset about. And then finally, it just allows you to feel a lot more confident that whatever it is that's coming up is something that you can navigate calmly, stay on balance, and be able to help the people who need it. All right, so I'm going to talk next about the 5 ways that we can strengthen our empathy at work. What I'm hoping is that this is not, a quick time period that you spend with me on the webinar and then you close the door on this and go back to your regular life without incorporating it. And so what I've got for each of these 5 ways is an opportunity for you to practice these skills. So each step includes both the step itself and then some ways for you to practice this on your own over the next few days or weeks. So here we go. Step 1 is get curious. I think a lot of us are very used to being responsive, to issues in the workplace. And what that means is I've got the answer. I'm the answer person. I'm the fix-it person. So somebody comes to you and you immediately leap into action. This step actually requires you to take a step back. So we're not going to be so proactive. We're not going to be so assertive. We're not going to be instantly leaping into action. We're just going to sit back and observe for a little while. This is something that can be particularly difficult for people the higher up they get in the organization. The more that you are the person everybody comes to for help, the harder this is going to be for you. So you're going to have to really be thoughtful about incorporating this into your life. Really think through ways to be receptive, to sit back and just watch what's going on around you. It can be helpful to do it in a time when you're not in charge. So not when you're leading a meeting, when you're attending a meeting that somebody else is in charge of, they're the ones working through the agenda. Or even honestly, if you're out in the world, maybe you're at a restaurant or I don't know, at the dog park or something, just watching other people interact. What you want to do with this step is just notice the ways that other people are interacting with each other and then name it. So as an example, perhaps you're sitting at a meeting, again, you're just sitting back, watching what's going on, and you notice that Megan tells a joke and everybody in the meeting laughs except Ben. Now, step one is just noticing that, right? Noticing Ben didn't laugh when everybody else laughed. And then the next thing is ask why. How come? Why didn't Ben laugh? For that, you have to look at Ben, notice what's going on with him. Maybe he's just looking out the window. Maybe he's not paying attention at all and he just missed it. That happens. Or maybe his brow is furrowed, or maybe his lips are pursed and he looks away. That can be an indication that he's angry about what Megan just said. Maybe he was offended by the joke. Maybe Ben just likes to be the one to tell the jokes and he's annoyed that somebody else got a laugh. There can be a lot of different reasons for that, but the way to uncover those reasons is to give yourself the moment to sit back and observe and name what you're seeing. So here are your practice steps for the next few days. Just take a little time to practice this, observe the people around you and how they're interacting with each other. Again, this can be in a work meeting or it could be out in the world somewhere. Notice what it is that you see and name it. Ben didn't laugh. How come? He looks annoyed. What's he annoyed about? Right? So it's this repeated process of observe, name, ask why. Observe, name, and ask why. One final tip on this, a lot of us have very, very busy brains. So maybe you think when I'm sitting in a meeting, I'm either, taking furious notes or I'm thinking through all the other things that I have to get done that afternoon. It can be really hard to get the quiet that we need to be able to be present in the moment and observe what's going on. So my advice for you on that, try to practice it with something like meditation. Meditation can be really, really helpful. So meditation or mindfulness, there are a lot of great apps and things out in the world on that. Calm is an app that I really like. Sometimes people do things like you can set a little reminder, a calendar notice for yourself, maybe at noon every day, give yourself one moment of just quiet breathing, thinking more quietly. Just practice getting a little bit quieter. It'll help you observe what's going on around you. We're getting messages all the time about what other people are thinking and feeling. We just often miss it because our brains are so busy. Step 2 is make an easy connection. And for this, I'm going to tell you to do something that I myself really struggle with, and that is to make small talk. I am not somebody who traditionally really enjoys small talk. I am not somebody who talks to people on airplanes. I don't like to make conversation with people in stores. But when I did the research on this, I found that, first of all, everyone is actually happier when they make small talk. Even the people who claim to hate small talk like me are happier when they make small talk. And so I did the experiment on myself. I tried it for a little while where I made an affirmative effort to talk to the people who I ran into out in the world. And I found it was true for me too. I actually, if I, chatted with the clerk at the checkout line in the grocery store, I would walk out a little bit happier than the days when I didn't do that. So one is it just makes you happier. But then the other thing that is amazing about these small connections is they really are a powerful way of building our empathy, building our connection with the people around us. Another piece of research that I found that was really disturbing is that people naturally feel more empathy for those of the same race as them. So they did a study where they had participants who were white and who were Asian, and they showed them pictures of people who were either happy or in moments of sickness or distress, and they measured their biological response, their empathetic response to that. And they found that people had greater empathetic responses to people of their same race. We are tribal people. We often are looking for connections with others, and race is a very easy one, right? I can look at people and generally tell what their race is. And it turns out we often feel a greater affinity for people of our own race. But here is the really incredible thing. The research also shows that we can overcome that bias toward people of our own race through making small connections. Again, we're tribal people. We are always looking for something that aligns us with somebody else. Like, are you on my team or not? And so they did things. They had people do just random experiments. Like they told them, you're on, team blue or team yellow. Or they told them, I want you to look at a screen full of dots and estimate how many dots are on the screen. And then they would tell them either you're an overestimator or an underestimator. And that means you have these different characteristics. When they have done these experiments and shown people, oh, you're on this team or this team, people felt a strong affinity with people on their own team, strong enough to overcome the racial bias. Isn't that incredible? So if we can build an easy, just in some ways meaningless connection with somebody else, it can help us overcome differences in race, age, gender, orientation, all of the other things that often tear us apart. So that's part of why we want to do that small talk. What we're looking for are things we have in common with people, because it gives us a flood of that oxytocin, that connection vibe, and that feeling, that good feeling we have toward people, that builds our empathy. So the practice pointer for this step is work on your small talk, chat up the clerk at the store, your neighbor that you see when you're out walking, the guy at the security desk, anybody that you come across. Just work on it for the next few days. I bet that you'll find, like I did, that it actually makes you happier than you would expect. And also that you'll start finding these easy connections with people that make you feel closer to them. A few ideas in particular at work for ways to find those kinds of connections. One thing is to notice something about them in the environment. So maybe they are wearing a holiday themed scarf or pin, or they have something related to a team, a sports team somewhere in their environment, like a, a Red Sox pennant or something like that, or a vacation photo, any, picture of their dog, anything that there is, and ask them about it. What kind of dog is that? What's his name? And what you'll find often is you can pretty quickly come across something that the two of you have in common. And that can be a great thing to help you later on. If maybe have to talk to them about something more difficult, if you have this baseline of communication about non-work related things that's easier, that can make it easier for you later when you have to have the harder conversations. I spoke recently with a client of mine, and he was talking about somebody that he works with pretty closely. And I said, well, what is she into? Does she run? Does she travel? Does she, like cats? And he said, I have no idea. I don't know at all. He knew her work background really well. He knew her expertise, but he didn't know anything about who she was outside of work. When we are able to show people that we care about who they are outside of work, that is another way that we're showing them that they're valued, which again is one of the things people are really looking for right now. So these small connections can make a much bigger difference than you may realize. All right, and then I have one final challenge for you on this step, and that's to try to find something in common with somebody who seems incredibly different from you. So whether that's race, age, gender, class, whatever it is, if somebody just seems very, very different from you, I challenge you to just in a few-minute conversation, see if you can find one thing that you have in common with them. Step 3 is ask why. And what I mean by this in particular is when you find yourself getting annoyed with somebody at work, ask why. Maybe there is somebody on your team who is constantly sending you little emails, just, quick emails. Every time something occurs to them that they want to talk to you about, they send you an email. And for you, that's really annoying because it means constantly you're getting this pop up and you're getting interrupted in your work. And it ends up you're actually sort of annoyed with this person in general. So what you want to do is ask why. First, the why helps you understand. When I see this person, why do I get this negative feeling every time I see this person? Maybe the answer is because she's constantly sending me emails that interrupt me when I'm working. Then why? Why does she keep sending the emails? And maybe you have to look at the emails a little bit to see what's going on. Maybe it's that she's kind of a scattered thinker and doesn't, think about the impact of her behavior on others. Maybe it's that she can't ever catch you on the phone. Are you somebody who doesn't respond to phone calls and voicemails? Or would it be helpful just to set up a once a week meeting with her where you can talk about these issues? Um, Maybe it's that you are not responding. And so she feels like she has to follow up because she knows once it gets down in your inbox, you're never going to respond. When you are able to first recognize the annoyance and then get a few levels down on why it is that that's happening, that's going to allow you to better address the issues that are coming up in the workplace. Again, the goal here is to try to address small problems before they become big ones. If this team member feels like she can't get your attention, that's a bigger problem. And it's something that you do need to address as a manager. You have to be able to be responsive and get people the help that they need. If she's not able to continue working until she hears from you and you're not responding, that's something that's important for you to understand as a manager. So this step again is ask why, but in particular, ask why when you uncover something annoying or bothersome about people that you're working with, the things that are kind of driving you a little bit batty in the workplace. The other thing that this can do beyond helping you uncover problems is it helps you feel connected to people. Maybe it's that somebody is kind of always showing up late and you're annoyed about that. Why are they always late? But then when you think through why are they always late, it's because it turns out that they are managing, getting 3 young kids out the door in the morning. And when you really think through everything that they have to do in the morning before they get to work, you think, God, that person is really carrying a lot. And it can help you feel a little bit warmer to them and less annoyed. So some of these things are ways to identify problems, and some of it is just a way to build a stronger connection with people and maybe help you get over your annoyance. So here are your practice tasks for the next few days. Notice and name your negative emotions around coworkers. Sometimes these people are clients as well, right? Sometimes it's our client who's really bothering us. So as well as employees. Notice and name those negative emotions. I'm angry with this person. I'm annoyed with this person. And then ask yourself why you feel that way. What is the specific behavior that's bothersome? Again, maybe it's the emails, but if you just notice, I feel negatively, I kind of don't like that person. That's a clue that you need to explore. Why is it that I have that reaction? I don't like that person. Well, maybe it's not everything they do, it's the emails. And then again, ask why. What is it about the emails that's bothering you and why are they doing it? What are they seeking when they are engaging in that behavior? Step 4 is one that might surprise you a little bit. I am going to tell you to read. The reason I am telling you this, I have to just put my own biases up front. I love to read. I'm constantly reading, and I'm an author. So understand, where I'm coming from this with this. But I will also tell you that the research shows that one of the most powerful ways to build empathy is to read, especially to read two kinds of books. One is literary fiction, which means fiction that illuminates the human condition or really gives you a very clear and nuanced view of character, of real people. And what this is doing, what literary fiction does, is it helps you to see the world through somebody else's eyes, which is what empathy is all about. If you can really step in somebody else's shoes, it's going to help you to feel a connection to them and understand what it is that they're going through and why they might be reacting in certain ways to different situations. The other type of book that is useful to read is nonfiction that shows you a perspective different from your own. So whether that's a kind of sweeping narrative that helps you understand a community or a part of the world that is different from yours, or a memoir where somebody is sharing their own perspective and life view. These types of books can be really, really helpful. And truly, studies have shown that when we read books, our empathy increases. So this is an easy one to know what your task is. Obviously, you've got to start reading more. Make a list of books that you'd like to read. It's a great time to do it right now at the end of the year. Come up with a list of great books and try to read at least one book a month. When I share out the recording of this training, I will also share with you a list of books that I like to recommend, in part because I'm a real book pusher myself, but also because I know that it can be helpful just to hear some books outside of the things that you have on yourselves, some other things that might be useful for you to take a look at. Remember that what we're looking for in particular is literary fiction, meaning fiction that gives you a view of a strong character, a really good nuanced portrayal of character and illuminating something about the human condition, exploring larger concepts. And then nonfiction that helps you understand the experiences of people who are different from you. I am going to give you an out. If you are somebody who says, I just don't read, there's no way I have time to read. First off, I will say, audiobooks are also great for this, and you can listen to them on your commute or on your run while you're doing dishes. So audiobooks also work for this. I will include on my list of books some novels in verse, which are poetry, books of poetry that are very, very short. I mean, some of them you can read in an hour. And then finally, if still none of that would work for you, movies are also wonderful for that. There are some really phenomenal movies. Particularly, I find it helpful to look at Oscar Best Picture winners. Those tend to be really good ones when it comes to this, in particular, ways to build empathy. So look for some of those, again, Oscar award nominees or winners as an opportunity for you to see the world through somebody else's eyes. All right, my friends, we are here for step 5. This one is, I think, a little tricky, but it's also really, really important, and that's to watch out for your blind spots. We may think that we are connecting with everybody. We're seeing, maybe you've worked in the same organization for 20 years and you think, I know everybody here. I know exactly what they're good at, what they're not good at, the things they like, they don't like. I bet that there is something you're missing. A friend of mine took over a new team. This was last year. She took over a new team from a different manager because he moved on. And the guy that she took over from was somebody who was a really good athlete. He was a marathoner. I think he actually did triathlons as well. His physical fitness was an important part of his identity. And it was also a part of his worldview. Like, he thought of physical fitness as a sign that you were driven, disciplined, that you were sort of a successful person, somebody that he could really count on. And what that meant was that the team members who were more physically fit tended to be the ones that he relied on more. When my friend took over the team, she was not somebody who had that perspective. And what she found pretty quickly was that there was a woman on the team who had been ignored for quite a long time. She was a heavyset person. She was also really smart, had phenomenal judgment, knew the organization inside and out, and was on the verge of walking out the door because she thought, I've been here all this time and nobody seems to care what I think. So why would I stay? I have other offers. I can go someplace else. Well, my friend fortunately recognized the values that this woman brought to the organization pretty quickly and began to rely on her more and more, and ultimately made this woman her deputy. So this guy who left this team, when I think about him, I'm sure he didn't think that he had, that he was missing anybody. He thought he knew everybody on the team and what value they brought to the team, but he missed something because of who he was, because of the things that he valued in the world. And all of us do that, whether we know it or not. There are people that we're missing. I'll tell you one on myself. There was a guy that I worked with for a few years who was just kind of a quiet guy. I mean, we had worked together sort of tangentially. He was on a related team. We didn't work very closely together, and I never really took the time to get to know him because he just seemed kind of boring. He was very buttoned down. He didn't talk a lot. He was kind of quiet, and there were a lot of other more interesting people to talk to, and I would just focus on them. And then one day, he and I happened to be seated next to each other at a work dinner, and I started talking with him. Again, that making small connections. One of the things I found out about him was that in his spare time, he was an actor and had been in a lot of commercials. He did stand up and improv. He was somebody who maybe was quiet in a group situation at work, but if he got up on a stage, he was able to turn it on and be this incredibly charming, funny person. This was somebody that I had worked with for 2 years and had no idea that he had this background. And I really enjoyed talking to him. We built that connection, and it made it so much easier to work with him going forward. I was much more likely to stop by and ask for his help with something or get his perspective. And, when he would come into my office with a question, I felt a little lift. I was always glad to see him. So I know it can be hard, but what your task is going to be with this step is to think through, who are you missing? Who do you never talk to? Who is the person that you don't think of when you need help or advice, a new perspective on a problem that you're having? Who do you never have lunch with? And then just for a little while, think about them and think about what it is that you could do to connect a little better with them. Again, going back to that making small connections, can you have a quick conversation with them? Find out what are the things that they like to do outside of work. Can you find something that you have in common? What are the things that they like to do? What are they known for at work? Who are their friends? Who relies on them? Just try to find these opportunities to make connections, even with the people that you right now are looking right past. All right, so those are my 5 ways to strengthen your empathy at work. There's a lot more advice on this and similar topics in my book, The Empathetic Workplace. If you want, you can go to my website, which is catherinemanning.com, and download the first chapter of the book and take a look at that. I also have all the links to learn more about the book. I also do training and coaching on empathy at work. If you are interested in talking about other things that I do and ways we might work together, you can see the link up top for how to set up a quick call with me, and we can talk about what it is that you're facing and if there's anything I can do to help. And then finally, I hope that you stay in touch. There are all of my social media links are right there. I love talking with people about these issues of empathy at work. I post all over the place about these topics. And if it's something that interests you, I would love for you to stay in touch with me. Thank you so much.